Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of A Conversation with Floyd Marshall. And I am your humble host, Floyd Marshall Jr. Now, normally we do our podcast on Thursday, but we have such an exciting show for you tonight because a snowy day in Oakland will be opening in theaters Friday, March 17th. So I wanted to get these phenomenal gentlemen on the podcast so they can talk about this amazing film that is coming out. And this is a who's who lineup. I am so very excited. Today on the podcast, I am joined by none other than Kim Bass, writer and director, and the creator of Sister Sister, Keenan and Kel, writer on one of the most iconic comedy shows in history, In Living Color. I am also joined by Labid Aziz, co-founder of People of Culture Studios and so many other things. This gentleman has such a rich history and background, and it was just fascinating reading all of it. And last but not least, we have John Capetta, who is the founder of Project 9 Productions, and he is the executive producer on A Snowy Day in Oakland. And he also partnered with Mr. Bass on a few other films, one most notably and most recently, Tyson's Run. So I'm really excited to have all of these gentlemen on the podcast to talk about A Snowy Day in Oakland, which is opening this Friday in theaters. Now, just let you guys know who's going to be in this film, because this is absolutely amazing. Nicole Ari Parker, Kimberly Elise, Dion Cole, Tony Plana, Evan Ross, Remo Wilson, Michael Jai White, Claudia Zavalos, Arden Myron, Donis Leonard Jr., Marla Gibbs. Now, we could stop right there. And Loretta Devine. We could stop right there and end the show, because just reading the lineup is amazing. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing fine on my part.
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having us, Floyd. Great to be with you today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys. Oh, wow. This is such a pleasure. The power of Clubhouse, because I actually met Labid on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago, which is absolutely amazing. So that's one of the reasons why I love Clubhouse. But let's get right into this. So again, A Snowy Day in Oakland is opening in theaters. But let's go back for a second, because I'd love to know how all of you got your start in the industry, and anybody can take it.
Go ahead, Labid.
Thanks, Kim. Hey, I mean, I got my start. I made a documentary while I was at Brandeis University about my friend who was running a pizza shop, and that sort of began my journey in this creative arts, and ultimately I'm an activist filmmaker who initially chose the documentary form, and flash forward 25 years, and now I'm an executive in Hollywood.
Wow.
John?
Sure. Yeah, I guess the shortest tenure and maybe least interesting. I had a different career entirely, and it was in the corporate world, for 20 years, and transitioned to a little bit more independent investment management, actually, as kind of a next chapter for me, and decided about 7 years ago now to kind of combine my personal passions with my activity as an investment manager, and start looking for opportunities in film and storytelling and theater as well, to bring kind of a business background, a business acumen together with an appreciation and enthusiasm for the art in question. And in that kind of intentional search, early on, actually, in that, I met Kim Bass, and we spent a good year kind of getting to know each other and talking about projects, and looking over his shoulder and in post-production on a variety of things that he was doing, in addition to other filmmakers and other people that I've connected with and partnered with. But Kim and I spent a lot of time back then, and the film we're talking about today is really the even though it's the second one that Kim and I together are bringing out, it's kind of the first one that we greenlit together and actually sort of got after as our first move.
Awesome. And John, when did you start Planet 9 Productions?
So around 2016. So it was yeah. I had and I'll share one more just personal thing. I had a sabbatical year, by the way. I was overseas, took a sabbatical and brought the family and had time to sort of think and network and connect and get inside what was important for me in the next chapter, and really came back and it got started on this, formed Planet Nine, and began entertaining projects and began entertaining opportunities in the space.
That is absolutely awesome.
Hey, thanks.
Mr. Bass.
So for me, let's see. I have to go all the way back to when I was a little boy, and my grandfather took me to my first film. It was The Miracle of the White Stallions, a Disney film, and it was the first motion picture I'd ever seen on the big screen, and that changed my life. That night when I came home, I decided I wanted to be one of the people who could do that, who could make a movie. I had already really liked television shows, but watched everything in black and white and thought that they were pretty amazing until I saw a film. And once that happened, that had always been in my mind to be a filmmaker. And my mother continued to encourage me. And when it was time to go off to college, I told my father I would like to go to film school, and his response was, "Not on my dime." He said, "If I'm
doctor or lawyer,"
he said, if I got to come up with the scratch, I believe was his word. If I had to come up with the scratch to send you off to college, you're going to come back either as a doctor or a lawyer. And so off to school I went for, I guess I did 2 years, 1 year in Canada, another year in New York, and then I got an opportunity to go to Japan on a scholarship for martial arts. I was really big into the martial arts, and went off to Japan and stayed there for a while, came back, traveled the world, did some more education, and said, you know what I really want to do is make films. So I'm going to figure out how to make that happen. And that happened by me starting out by being a dishwasher at Ghirardelli's Chocolate Factory in San Francisco. And worked my way all the way up to a paper hat making sundaes, and eventually made my way to Hollywood. And, stayed here for a while and knocked around. And one day I was working a civilian job, as I'll call it, some sort of job where if you continue to work hard, you end up working for guys like Labid and John, and they might promote you and give you, some kind of wage you can live on. Well, my boss wanted to send me to Texas to be in charge of some division. And he was the kind of guy who you didn't say no. If you said no, you didn't have a job anymore. And I decided Texas is a lot farther away from Hollywood than I was. So I decided to stay. My mom actually helped me pay my rent for 6 months. We made a deal, 6 months of rent, $500 a month. And I'm going to write a screenplay during that time. I did, finished it on a Thursday, gave it to a producer on a Friday, and got a check for it on Tuesday. And I've been nothing but a writer or director ever since. So I owe it all to my mom, fronting those dollars. Obviously, a lot of people have helped me along the way with my career, but the initial sort of success came because, once again, Mama believed in her little boy, and I think we're trying to make her proud. I don't know if I've achieved that yet, but we're trying.
Well, you're being very modest, because I actually listened to an interview you did where you talked about that story, and it got me very emotional because of the place that you were in your life at that time. $19.60 in the bank. So you couldn't even take $20 out the bank because you didn't have enough.
That's
but
true.
I want to go back even a little further than that, and then I have a question for you, Labid. When your grandfather took you to the movies, and then you later on you asked him, Grandpa, why did you take me to the movies? And he didn't have a good answer for you. He just said something told him to basically do it. I got chills because this is a gentleman that I listened to at Milet, and he says things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And I really believe that particular thing happened for you because you asked God for it, because you prayed and you opened your eyes and said, God, I want to be a filmmaker.
I did. And
then all of a sudden, Granddad comes over and takes you to the movies. So that was amazing. And then fast forward to, you basically being near the end of your rope as far as finances are concerned, absolutely no money left. You can't pay rent. And then you finally end up talking to your mom and you tell her the situation. And she says, if you don't dream, you die. That got me. Because that is so true, because without dreams, then what is there? And then finally, I just want to touch on the part about when you were told to put the astronaut book back.
Mm.
And what struck me about that was this. You end up becoming a commercial jet pilot. You buy a couple of planes, but I didn't look at it through that lens. The way I looked at it was, you take people on journeys. So you're kind of a pilot of people's fantasies, imaginations, and dreams. So although you didn't become an astronaut, you allow people to dream and go on journeys every single time they turn on the film. Am I wrong?
I can't say that you're wrong, and boy, do you do your research. And so you get me all misty-eyed here, but yeah, there is a lot. Well, everyone has a story, and there's a lot, I suppose, to my different elements. And much of it seems magical, I must admit. And this film, A Snowy Day in Oakland, is an attempt to convey that magic from the childhood, but put it in a context where people can relate to it today with their own aspirations, with their own dreams, what their own fears are. And ultimately, everything that you described, I have to say, it ends up being love. It was love that had my grandfather take me to the picture. It was love that had my mom pay the rent. It was love even for my father to say, hey, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer. He wanted me to succeed. So ultimately, the things that I loved might have been important to me, but the folks around me, it was important to them because they loved me that I achieved those dreams. And I was always considered a very big dreamer in my family, not very realistic. So to be able to literally live out my dream, and I'm doing that. I do it with John Capetta. I do it with Labid Aziz. Working with these gentlemen is just a continuation of me meeting good people who facilitate, almost selfishly so, the achievement of continuing to reach for the stars, to continue to tell my stories, to continue to basically live out the destiny that I planted in my own head when I was a very young boy. So there's magic there. And I hope that this film, A Snowy Day in Oakland, conveys that magic, because it's literally based on reality for me as a child. The neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood, the voices, the experiences, all of that was a nugget that grew into a boulder that made this story possible. And so it's an homage to my grandfather and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and all of those folks who were part of the journey that made me able to make movie magic happen. And so, you brought up a lot of very interesting things, and they are very emotional. And I think if you tell people all of these little parts of my journey, some of it just seems so fantastical. But that's life. Life is fantastical if you see it that way. Every happening, every happenstance is a magical moment. I mean, how I met John Capetta was someone else from the past reaching out to me, looking to be in the film business again. And they hadn't been in the film business for 18 or 20 years. Mm-hmm. And then, and John's just on his way back from his sabbatical in France and saying, I'm in the next chapter of my life. And, John's a very successful businessman, very astute businessman who appreciates the arts, and decided to take a look at the film business, and then what he might be able to do, because he wants to impact society and wanted to do it in a particular way and through the film business if he could. And so that, that meeting, came together based on LinkedIn outreach from someone I hadn't spoken to in 18 years. And then Labid was another sort of situation where someone I had done some business with, releasing a picture many years ago, said to me once he heard sort of what the agenda that John and I were setting for moving forward as we make our films, he said, I know there's this guy you got to meet. And he kept insisting on it. And then that guy happened to be Labid Aziz. So it's all, it's all, the odds of these things happening are probably astronomical, but the reality is they happen. So maybe they weren't so astronomical, or it was meant to be. So.
Well, I totally believe, again, I'm going to quote Ed Milet, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And the through line with all of you gentlemen, doing my research, is you all seem to want to do things as far as films and projects that shine a light on certain things in the human condition. The lack thereof of a certain thing, or, not having love, or, mental illness and things like that. And Labid, I wanted to ask you, what is the mission of People of Culture Studios? Because looking at your background, it's heavily based in activism, and, looking to bring people together, not based on color. Because I see that you're very big on that it's not about color, but it's more about the culture and what actually brings people together. So when this film was brought to you, what was your reaction? And did it take you long to say, hey, you know what, this is definitely something that I want to be a part of?
Thank you for that question, Floyd. Going back to even what Kim was saying a second ago of how we met through an individual, right? I think we're in a people business, right? This is it's the creative arts, but it's ultimately we're in business with people, and sometimes we make decisions because of the people we want to work with, the people we want to support, and leaning into my own history a little bit. I learned early on that one of my superpowers was helping create safe spaces for the other, right? And when people feel safe, when they have that sort of safety net around them, they're able to do incredible things, right? And so, I mean, Kim, we could even speak to the, you letting us open up the movie and edit the film, right? And at the end, when we'd finished, when POC had taken its turn editing the movie, you said to me, Labid, wow, you did exactly what you said you were going to do. There's no bait and switch, and you've helped make the movie better. Thank you, right? But also it was a thank you because you trusted me, but I think that speaks to a larger thing in our industry, in the world, where again, it comes down to people. You just want to have people that you can trust, that if they say they're going to do something, they do it, and it's that simple. And I think for this film, again, our mutual friend was like, this is somebody you should work with, figure this out, there's something here to do. And then getting to know Kim, getting to know John, it just really started to make sense. And, wanted to give this film a platform, a real theatrical platform, so people had a chance to see it, all the love and the sweat and the time that John and Kim put into making it, right? It deserved a theatrical release, right? And so I wanted to, be part of the team that took a chance to help this film see the light in the big theaters. I think there's something to be said about the theater now more than ever in our world of streaming and AVOD and everything else. So there was a bunch of reasons why, and I don't regret a minute of it, because again, it's the people that we work with and the opportunities that we create for ourselves, and it's been a great ride.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. And I was a little shocked to hear that you were a hip hop dancer. That one kind of threw me off.
Floyd, I'd like to thank you for sharing that with me.
I didn't see that. I found that interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I grew up. I was the kid who was recording Yo MTV Raps on VHS tapes in the mid '80s, and
Okay.
and by the late '80s, like in junior high school, I was battle dancing. Yes, of all places, New Hampshire. You wouldn't expect
Wow.
people in New Hampshire to be battle dancing to hip hop, but that's what I was doing. And then in high school, we were a part of a small little group, but I choreographed a lot of dances for the school. I joked that in a different life I would have been a dancer. Dancing is my heart and soul, and I love weddings for that reason. But yeah, I was a hip hop dancer for a little while. I was even a battle dancer in the late '80s. So little known secret, now out in the world.
I'm sorry, sir. I do my research.
You do your
But you know what's great about that? Because nothing brings people together like film and music. You don't even have to speak the same language, but we all hear the same sound. And you've been places where I've been to other countries, and I don't understand the language, but the music moves you. As a friend of mine likes to say, it's not the language, it's the feeling.
Right.
It's the feeling.
Yep.
And John, I want to touch on that with you, because if I'm not mistaken, you said, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if it was your father or your grandfather that owned the barbershop.
That was my father.
Okay, so your father owned the barbershop,
Yep.
and a lot of things happen in a barbershop.
Yep.
A lot of talking, and it's kind of what Labid talked about, creating a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about that briefly?
Sure. Yeah. And I guess I'd share. It's interesting growing up. So he had a shop in West LA, and 40 years, one location, and we were living in the Valley at the time, and he worked a long day, right? Got up early for the drive over the hill, as he would say, and and the drive back. But one of the very clear things for me and my siblings, I'm one of 6, is there was this whole world that my dad would bring to the dinner table at night, and he loved his customers, right? He had customers through generations, and so we could see how much they meant to him, and easy to understand how much he meant to them. And a lot of these customers, connected with our family's life in many different ways, right? So I had a very strong, and then there's the occasional time of spending a Saturday afternoon with him. So, I grew up seeing it as a sacred and important place, and a place where people really do feel at home. They get comfort, they get comforted, they get taken care of, and they do it in a place where where they all know each other very well. So it was we're a family that went to church, but it was sort of the barbershop and the church community. These were places that just had sort of enormous impact and meaning in how we interacted with the rest of the world. And so I think this script right away did resonate from that perspective. And I think in the day and age that we live in, the fact that you have this block where there's a storefront church and the pastor, and that's a very important place for the community. And next to it is the barbershop beauty shop, and that's a very important place to the community. And then in comes Dr. Latrice Monroe opening her storefront psychology practice, right? And so you've got these 3 places that I think each in sort of our our mental health, right? Our well-being, right? They're very, very important, and obviously different perspectives. And I think that interaction and interplay between those 3 spaces, those 3 services is really fascinating. And I think you're gonna you and hopefully the viewers are gonna love the film and connect with it the way I did and the way all of us have.
And see, that's very interesting, because you have an upscale, let's just say, doctor move into the neighborhood. And one of the things that's not widely prevalent, at least when I was growing up in the African American community, was Black people going to the therapist. It was like, you ain't telling nobody our business. So everything that went on, regardless of how dysfunctional or toxic it was, you're not going outside to talk to those other people if we're going to handle it, we're going to handle it here. And then the other thing that I kind of took, and I just watched the trailer, was the fact that you have someone upscale coming into the neighborhood, which is a middle class, the low income neighborhood. Gentrification. So now people are nervous because if one person with money can move into the neighborhood, now what? So did the film tackle any of those issues?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that was one of the pillars of the pitch that I first made to John about the picture. When he asked me I said, I've got this idea. And he said, let me hear it. And I said, well, there's a barbershop. And right away, he said, my dad owned a barbershop. So now I'm willing to listen to more. And I said, we're going to tackle mental health, or as I like to call it, emotional health in the hood. We're going to deal with gentrification. That's also a part of the film, actual gentrification, and the police presence in the neighborhood. So, and he said, well, what is this film, if you had to sum it up? And I said, John, if you don't mind, it's A Wonderful Life meets The Wizard of Oz meets Do the Right Thing. That's the picture.
That's good.
And so all of these things, Floyd, that you mentioned, though some of it, we don't hit it over people over the head with it in the trailer, the film is actually much more than what the trailer suggests. So we're hoping folks come in and discover, wow, this is funny, but there's all this other stuff. So there's clear gentrification themes running through the picture. It's one of the things that is upsetting to the people in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it's mental health, it's love, it's about forgiveness. This picture, it's about happiness, and it's about having a spirit of can do, and a feeling of both family and community. So it's a complex picture that's very enjoyable, and the complexities, I believe, are somewhat easily digested through the mechanism of comedy. So that's what makes our picture special. It makes it, I think, different. And I think that, you show up at somebody's door, I got this independent film, and though it won't cost $100 million, it's going to cost a few dollars to make, but it's going to be different and it's going to be special. You have to have a compelling and convincing argument. And, John, my partner in crime here with the filmmaking, is not easily convinced. And then Labid, who's, launching his own studio. I mean, he hit the ground running with a studio with multiple deals all over the world. He's not so easily convinced that this is the right move to make for his studio. So I am confident that we have something that's really entertaining, first and foremost, but it entertains because it has messages within the film itself that will resonate with all kinds of people, and we keep it real. We do. It's for our community, but it has universal themes, and anyone can enjoy this picture. So I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised once they go in. If they go in looking for slapstick comedy, they'll find a lot of humor. There are a lot of laugh out loud moments, but there's some heartfelt, serious moments, and their relationship stresses and strains that go on in the community. So it plays, though it's magical, it plays as real. And I think ultimately it's very entertaining and satisfying. So that's my 48-second pitch on the project.
So you know what? So question for both John and Labid. What Kim just basically talked about. So when that pitch was made, what were both of your initial reactions when he brought this to you and he said, hey, I have an idea for a film, and it's going to be a combination of this, it's going to be a combination of this, and it's going to be a little mixture and a sprinkle of that. What were your initial reactions to this?
Go ahead, John, because you got
yeah. So it's interesting. One thing, and Floyd, I'm taking a half step back to answer the question a little bit, because your question really reminded me of it. I'll be quick about this, but this one more thing about my father for a moment, if I could, personal thing. So
please.
A very happy-go-lucky gentleman, right? A very happy, friendly, loving, gregarious person. And so I saw this and loved this, as I said, loved what he did, loved his customers. He cut hair on Sundays in hospitals, for example. He just volunteered, that sort of thing. But I learned a lesson. I was quite young, but he lost his lease. He lost his lease in LA. It was it was a barber shop on, Pico and Westwood, and gentrification was happening there. And all of a sudden there was a whole new experience in the family, whole new experience and for him. And he moved a couple of doors down and lost that lease as well. And that led to the end of it. So there was a lesson there that suddenly in this story, that is a very important theme, one of many, right? But that's one part of the story, that resonated very personally, obviously. But I think I'm glad you brought it up, Kim. And I was recently, reviewing some things. That idea of, the It's a Wonderful Life meets A Wizard of Oz meets Do the Right Thing, was the initial pitch that Kim gave me. It was the initial conversation. And that was obviously very intriguing, right? Those are meaningful, all three of them, right? Especially the older ones, but really meaningful movies. I watch them every year, obviously, and they stayed with me, right? They're inside of us, those kinds of films. And Do the Right Thing is a wonderful film. So it was very intriguing, and started to lay out. We're going to build we're going to build this block on a soundstage. We were starting to work through the details of it. But the film we have today, the film that's coming out Friday, is completely true to that headline idea, right? That idea that started with 6 years ago is absolutely on the screen that's coming out this weekend. And, I'm super excited about that fact. I just think it's there's, I don't know how far we get into it, but it's a very, very interesting, to me, it was a very intriguing idea that I'm thrilled that we've been able to execute, and Labid thrilled, obviously, that Labid connected with us and with this project as well. So we have the opportunity now to be on the big screen for audiences to experience this communally, right? For them to be together, having a communal experience of this story, I think is very important, because it's a long list of themes, right? What Kim said is absolutely right. I mean, we do, fidelity and forgiveness, it's huge, right? Mental health in the community, it's huge. There's a lot of things, but they're all really resonant. They're all real things that we're dealing with day in and day out. And I think one thing that's unique about it is we're tackling those. But as Labid has said many times, and I think each of us, it's a light, approachable, enjoyable movie too, right? So you're getting this with humor, and you're getting this with something that is certainly uplifting and approachable. But we're dealing with the big things that we do face, this community faces every day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kim did a really good job of threading the needle in terms of the topics in a vehicle that is a community event, which is why we're getting behind it from a theatrical standpoint, right? With the comedy and the humor and the touch, and really making it a broad film so that the family can enjoy it, multiple generations can enjoy it, and even then talk about these issues that maybe they wouldn't necessarily talk about head on, because this film maybe gives them permission to do so after watching it. So I think there was this great threading of the needle that Kim did. And I mean, look, just so for the audience too, to be clear, this was a labor of love for Kim and John. And I came in, at the end to really work on distributing it as our studio's first theatrical release. So we're really proud to have it be our first.
And I definitely can't wait to see it. But you said something earlier, and I want to touch on that for all of the writers, the filmmakers, the content creators that are listening now and will be listening in the future. 6 years. 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Not overnight.
Right.
6 years. So can you just talk about the creative process, and first, 6 years, what made you decide to write this script, and why did you title it A Snowy Day in Oakland? I'm curious about that.
Okay, so the idea for the nugget of inspiration came many years ago, many years ago, probably at least maybe 15 years ago is when I actually got the idea, where the story instantly filled my head. And that had to do with a conversation with my uncle. regarding my aunt, and my aunt also is my godmother. She's my mother's sister. And what he said to me, which I won't say here because it's a big part of the picture, but what he said to me inspired me to write, to come up with the entire story. I wrote it later, but I had the entire story in my head soon after the conversation with my uncle. And by the way, my aunt and my uncle will be at a screening in New York on Friday the 17th, and they will literally recognize characteristics and the atmosphere that's created by the characters in the film. They'll know it's about them, and I prepared them for that, but they don't know, what the entire story is. And then, of course, all the other things that sort of circle that story all come from personal experiences with my own family and sisters, my brother and my sisters, etc. So that was the nugget of the idea. And so I had that for a long time, and I had written, some basic pages about it. But once I met John, he said, and I was just finishing up a film called Day of Days, which stars Tom Skerritt and Claudia Zavallos. And it's a 2-character piece. And I believe I met John the first day he came to the sound stage where I was just finishing up doing the sound mix before distribution. And we went to a lunch and we talked about that. And he said, that's terrific. Maybe I can jump in at the tail end of that project. But what are we going to do next? And that's when I pitched him A Snowy Day in Oakland. But at the time, the title was Head Shop. I called it Head Shop and made that pitch that we talked about. It's a Wonderful Life meets The Wizard of Oz meets Do the Right Thing. And once he says, I love that idea. I said, do you think that's something we could make? He said, you know what? I think that might be something we can make. I need to read the script though. So then I sat right down and wrote the screenplay. And once I typed the end, I sent an email to John Capetta and he read it overnight. And the next day, I believe we talked, John, and he said, I love it. Let's make this movie. I know it sounds very simplistic, but
yeah, I would just, I'll add, Kim, just a couple, not to get us off point on this, but there was actually, when we said what's next, I'll share with you guys, Kim had 10 different ideas. By the way, there was a list of 10 titles, 10 concepts, 10 ideas. And we sort of did talk through all of those, right? We did talk through all of those, but I said, this is the first one. And we very clearly got our minds around it. And, but anyway, that was certainly the launch.
Exactly. And now the reason it took 6 years to bring it to the theaters is because we shot most of the picture. We had it in the can, and sometimes it was such a complex story that we were working through what do we need to keep, what do we not need to keep, and I tend to get bored very quickly. So I'm working on this project, but at the same time I was working on that project, I was inspired to write another screenplay. So I wrote a screenplay. And that screenplay was Tyson's Run. And I actually, same sort of scenario, not so much of a pitch, but here's a screenplay, John, I want you to read. And he read it, and that also touched him for his own personal reasons about an autistic boy, 15-year-old autistic boy who wants to heal the rift between his mother and father by becoming a marathon champion, something that should have been impossible for him. And I got a call from John, I hope you don't mind. And he said, I read it last night. It brought a tear to my eye. And I woke up this morning and went for a run, first run in a long time. John was an athlete in school, both high school and college. And he said, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I want to make this movie too. So while we were still figuring out exactly what we were going to do with then Head Shop, we had an opportunity because of timing to go off and make Tyson's Run. So we literally were in post-production on Head Shop and went off and made yet another movie called Tyson's Run. And then we had to sort of fast track that film because we had distribution lined up through Collide and Universal Pictures. And so that took up, a great deal of time as well. I would say we probably slowed the process down for A Snowy Day in Oakland by at least a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right, John? Something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And but because of the way we did what we did, Tyson's Run was released theatrically nationwide last March 11th. And then a year and a week later, we will be releasing A Snowy Day in Oakland. So as a filmmaker, certainly as an independent filmmaker, it doesn't get any better than that to be able to release pictures back to back. But it was, 5 years of work for those two pictures. They just happened to be coming out 12 months apart. So we're kind of on a roll here, and we have some good things planned for the future, but we'll save that for another time. But so that was the process of both pictures, and that's why the timing is what it is. And then of course COVID didn't help. That was
Right.
made things challenging, because we actually shot some more scenes once we got the picture to Labid and his team. They had some questions. They had some instantly they saw a theatrical release, but in order to justify that theatrical release, we got to make sure that the audience is as large as it can be. And so we had to put a few more decorations on the Christmas tree, so to speak. And so we actually ended up shooting some things per Labid and his team, per their suggestion. And then my executive producer was open to that. So we went out and we shot some things that really enhanced the picture, would enhance the experience and make things even clearer for the audience. So, and here we are today.
And the title, when did the title switch come into play?
That's
Who
where
came up with it?
Labid will jump in on
You
the.
gotta-
Through that process of working with Kim and John to talk about scenes and get it ready for a theatrical release in terms of opening it up in the edit room. There's a line in the movie, and a lot of people on my team were like, this is the magical title. The title is right here, and also given what the word headshot means now in a lot of places, we didn't want there to be any ambiguity, right? And so we brought up the concern of the title to Kim and John, and they were both very open to ideas, right? And luckily, it didn't really take a lot of thinking on our part. It just took watching the movie a couple of times, because it's a line in the movie, and it just made perfect sense to be the title of the film. And John Kim agreed, and so here we have A Snowy Day in Oakland.
Excuse me, I had a little tickle in my throat. Wow.
That's all right.
That's great. So I had a question, but I want to jump really quickly. Excuse me. When you took the meeting, John, and you asked the question that trips up a lot of filmmakers, what else do you have?
Mhm.
That's a question. Excuse me.
Mhm.
That really trips up a lot of creatives. So what advice would you give someone if they just so happen to get a meeting with you? What advice would you give them if they decided, well, I'm sitting here in front of John Capetta and I have this idea and I want to pitch it, and you hear it and you say, well, that's not great. What else do you have? What advice would you give someone if they found themselves, in that position?
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting here is, and you started with this, Floyd, today, and I'm going to address your question, but I want to give the context that, Labid is a very purpose-driven person, right? In his life, it's an intentional purpose, and he's committed himself to it. Same with Kim, and same with me at this juncture, right? So for Kim and I, when we connected, a lot of it was sort of prior to the idea of what else do you have in terms of projects. It was much more about what do you want to say and what do you care about and what's in your heart. And we, I think elements of that film that Kim was wrapping up, made me feel confident that we had some commonality. And if I may, you don't mind me saying it, so Kim, I mean, the way you tell it is fine, which is, these sort of quick these meetings and the outcome. And the way I think back on it was 9 months of talking to each other and getting to know each other. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I've got memories of, pacing up and down, down a hallway in a house with these conversations that we had. So I think there was, I think my point, Floyd, and it may not be that helpful to your question, but my point is we really had the time to develop a common mission, a common understanding, a common objective and purpose. And we talked about lots and lots of projects. And so the what else do you have was a step in that process of, who are you? Who are you? What are you about? What's your why? What are your goals? And it wasn't me interviewing Kim in that way. It was both of us really kind of getting to know each other and then finding this commonality of our real purpose and objectives, if that makes sense. And I Labid, I feel the same way when we met. And I wasn't there when you and Kim met, but you and I met shortly after. And it was the same thing. So when I think about it, a little less transactional as like, what was said and what was said back and why it worked here, which I know is the essence of the question is kind of how can you, what can people take away to make it work? A lot of it here is really this relationship and this common mission. Having said that, though, it's an answer to your question too, which is what else you got, really means what else you got? Like what's, what's everything, let's get everything out there, and I think it was the willingness to dig in. And actually, Kim, you actually gave me a lot of time, a lot of patience for us to kind of get to know each other and explore that process. So Floyd, that's kind of my experience with it. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, Floyd, let me jump in here because, I didn't mean to short circuit things. It took a long time. John was about building a relationship, and that relationship became a friendship. So we didn't move forward on movies until, I had gone to his home. I had met his children, his lovely wife. We'd had dinners. We had, been to his office. And so it was just about people getting to know people. And I dare say that I don't think our partnership would have taken flight had his sons not liked me, had his wife not liked me. And John's first and foremost, he's a family guy. You could probably hear that in his voice when he talked about his father. Well, he's now that guy, right? That guy who comes home. He might have a shinier office than his dad did, but that community that he has around the table with his sons and his wife is sacred to John. And so, I got invited in a little bit, and I think John just sort of sat back and watched to see, if his dog would bite me or let me pet it or something. And I think that, we had some really, really wonderful conversations about life and about family. And so, yes, it's relationship building. I mean, nobody with any good sense in their head is going to meet someone, hear a fantastical story, and write a check, right? That's not how it works, because it's a long, laborious task to make a film, and it's an investment in both finances and time and feelings, and it's a big thing. It takes people, and our movie happens to be 91 minutes and 38 seconds long, but it was thousands and thousands and thousands of hours and days to put something like that together, and business decisions and emotional decisions that go into a film. And so for your viewers, I was giving them the shortcut, but the reality is you're going to have to build a relationship or be worthy of a relationship. Some people make their decisions very quickly and you get to the transaction right away. But even with that, you're going to be assessed and scrutinized. And so, but you need to have things people generally speaking don't want to jump into business with a one-trick pony. So, if you go in and say you're a writer, then you better have more than one script. And if you're a creative, you should have many creative ideas, because times change and circumstances change. And sometimes you have to, pitch the right thing at the right moment, but then you also have to be able to deliver that. And so that would be my advice to some folks is, a lot of it's luck, but much of it is being prepared. And you can walk into a pitch meeting, and I've been there at the studio level, thinking I've got this great idea, and literally, the head of the studio is like, yeah, Disney's already doing that. You got anything sort of like this? And if you've got that in the back of your mind, some other idea you've been working on, you better be able to pivot and then, do that right there at the table, or even in a hallway at one of the studios or with some producers, because you have to be nimble on your feet when it comes to being creative. You can't just have one idea. You have to have multiple ideas that you're able to put in the context of how this could be either a TV show or a feature film, and be able to explain it so that someone can see that it's entertaining. It doesn't have to be perfect. For example, with Labid, our picture, I think John and I both agree, it was pretty darn good when we gave it to Labid, but you have to be open enough for he and his people at POC Studios to say, okay, well, we're thinking this, and we're thinking this many theaters and this campaign. So in order for it to fit in the box that we need it to fit, are you open to making some adjustments to the picture, some enhancements to the picture, which will then make it at least worthy in our minds for, you know, a decent amount of expenditure and a theatrical release. And that's also having to be creatively flexible, and not, it wasn't, hey, point by point, do this, do this, do this, but here are some concerns we have, here are some issues we have, and then how can they be addressed? What do you have on the cutting room floor that could sort of address this? And then and a couple of ideas of, hey guys, I had in the back of my mind to do these things towards the end, but you know, for budgetary reasons or what have you, those never got done. Would that enhance it? And the answer was yes from the studio. And then you have to go back to, you know, my partner and executive producer, justify the scenes that you now believe will enhance, and go and shoot those things. So it's always a process, but you have to be willing to collaborate. You know, don't, I've done lots of pitch meetings at studios, and I've seen other people pitch, and they'll go in with their one idea, and the executive is leaning forward and saying, and then this happens, right? And then the novice person who's pitching said, no, that's not how it goes. And I said, if the executive sitting at the head of the table leans forward and is loving your idea and said, and then this happens, right? That's what happens. Just go.
You read my mind. My God, you read my mind. That is exactly what happened. And then you go and write that.
Yeah, again, to your viewers, Floyd, I think John and Kim did a really wonderful job talking about it's the relationships, it's people. One thing that I always tell people, if they're listening, is really try to inspire somebody to be there for you, right? Instead of asking for something, right? If we are focused on building genuine relationships, which is what, you know, Kim and John did, and then which is what we did, and I mean, my whole life has been about building genuine relationships with people that I care about, right? Because, you know, film, as you see here, 6-7 year journey, but it's even longer than that. So the people you work with, you want to, again, to Kim and John's, to Kim's point about John and his family, is you want to be able to have the people you work with over for dinner, spending time with your family, and vice versa, because there's a blurry line between the professional and personal life with what we do, because it consumes us, right? And so if those lines are blurred, then we better have amazing people in that blurry vision, because you don't know what space you're going to find us in, you know, at the dining table at home or at the conference room at the office, right? And so I have a 6-year-old daughter. I want her to know the people I work with and forge relationships, and for them to be around 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so it's really about the people, the relationships, and connecting on a human spiritual level.
Well, the last couple of minutes was absolutely a masterclass on the power of relationships. And you guys answered the question beautifully, because, you know, and just what you just alluded to, Labid, the fact that more than likely you're going to be on set more than 12 hours a day. And if you're married, if your spouse is going to want to know, well, who are you spending time with, you know, all day long? You know, I've been doing this for 18 years, and there aren't too many people that my wife doesn't know or know about, because she's not in it at all. But I basically run everyone by her. And to be perfectly honest, sometimes if they don't pass the sniff test, that's it. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you guys built a relationship, which is so vitally important. And the next question I have kind of touches on that, because this movie has an absolutely amazing cast. some who's who in the entertainment world, and especially the Black entertainment world. How in the world did you guys put this cast together? Because it is absolutely amazing.
Well, I'll go first, John, and then you clean up. You better clean up. You're right. The cast is fantastic, and we were very fortunate, and it came together actually quite easily. And I can only tell you what the actors all said to me as the writer director speaking to them. They said it was the material. They read the script, and once they read the script, they liked the message in the movie. They liked the characters in the movie, and to a person, they all wanted to come on board. It was not a very long process at all to cast them. They said the roles spoke to them, and it just one right after another. And a lot of conversations myself and with John, here a list of the sort of the dream cast, and we didn't stray far from it. I mean, there were a few that we couldn't get because of their schedules or what have you. The cast that you see, almost our first choice all the way across the board. And it was really about, John and myself having a conversation about how we saw them all put together. And then as the exec producer of the picture, he would say, yeah, I like it. Go get them. And then the next one. Yeah, I like it. Go get them. And once they got the screenplay, I mean, Loretta Devine actually gave me a call from New York. She was in New York and she had gotten the screenplay and an offer, and she just wanted to talk to me. And I thought it was, wow, it's Loretta Devine. And, I'm figuring here come all the demands. She's a straight up pro. She's done a lot and deserves a lot. But the conversation didn't go anyway near what I thought it was going to go. She just said, "Hi, Mr. Bass," with that voice of hers. And I was like, yeah, I just call me Mr. And I said, "Is this Loretta Devine?" She goes, "I like the way you say my name," she said. And I said, "Loretta, are you going to be in my movie?" And she says, "Yeah, I'm going to be in your movie." I said, "That's why I'm calling you, to tell you I love the script and I am going to be in your movie." And I said, "Okay, now we're off to the races." And pretty much to a person, Nicole and I had a meeting, and we had a lunch meeting. And at the end of that lunch meeting, I said, "You're my Latrice, and see you on set." And it was, Michael Jai White. We had worked together before, so that's a phone call to see if he would make himself available. Dion, we had a dinner and we talked about it. We had a meeting, and it was decided right at that dinner that he would play the role, and the rest sort of moved on from that. Claudia Zavallos, she had starred in Day of Days opposite Tom Skerritt, and then both of them had won Best Actors at the Women's International Film Festival. And she's my go-to, and and all the rest. Arden Marine, she read the script, she thought it was funny, so she jumped on board. Evan Ross read it and then said, "Yeah, I think that's going to work for me." Roger Cross, he just made some time when Roger Cross saw who else was in the movie, and he said, "Yeah, well, slide me in there somewhere." So once you start picking up momentum, once you can throw out Loretta Devine and Marla Gibbs, right, you're going to get the rest of them. Yeah, and then Marla came on, and it was just wonderful. So yeah, the cast is just terrific, and they're fantastic together. It's an ensemble piece, and they're just really Tony Plana coming on board. He was in New York. He said, "You know what? I'm going to make a little room in my schedule. I just love the messaging of this with the Latinos in the middle of the black." He said, "This is a black and brown movie, and I'm coming in." And so with Claudia and all the rest, and we just had a great time. We really did. And it was like dominoes. One fell, then the next fell, then the next fell, so to speak. So we didn't really have a hard time casting the picture. It was about their schedules. And sometimes someone had to go do something else. For example, Loretta was doing a play at the time she was doing our picture. And I was amazed at the fact that she could memorize all that dialogue. I mean, the woman can chew up dialogue like like nobody's business. And I was just impressed with all the dialogue she could memorize. She never missed a beat. She never had to go back to the script or anything during the shoot. And then I found out she was actually doing a play at night where she was the star of the play.
Wow.
And I went to see her one night after we wrapped a little bit early, and she was the star of the play. And I said, Loretta, how do you manage? How can you work so much? How can you memorize so much dialogue? And she said she doesn't really know. It's just, it's an ability she has. She says it's her gift. I can memorize dialogue. So, so the cast is terrific, and the audience is really, I think the movie is a comfortable fit, even though some parts of it hopefully will make you a little bit uncomfortable. If you're not a little bit uncomfortable in a movie, I don't think the movie.
It's not art.
It's not art. You've got it's got to challenge the audience. So this is a full contact sport, watching movies, and this one is full participation. Watch it because there are magical elements. So you got to pay attention to what these people are saying and why they're saying what they're saying. And if you're fully engaged in this picture, you're by the end, it's going to be so satisfying, but you're going to feel you've been on this emotional journey with these people. And I think, you know, from the tests that we've done, this is a picture that makes you laugh, makes you cry, and makes you clap. And, you know, I don't think it gets any better than that. And you've had an experience. And as Labid said, hopefully there's a takeaway where you go home starting to talk about some things you might not have talked about. And especially when it comes to your mental health or your emotional health. And you had mentioned that, Floyd, that was part of the pitch. What you said is what I said to John. And he said, well, why is this going to be so funny? I said, because for the most part, I said, Black folks don't do therapy. And it certainly wasn't talked about in our hood. And so when you understand that none of them want to go on this couch, and then you drop a psychiatrist or a psychologist in the middle of that action, how's that going to go down? Just conceptually, it's funny.
Funny, yeah.
He's going to open up a what on our street?
Mm-hmm. And then they see the hardest dude in the neighborhood going into. Oh, I was just dropping off a package. I'm not going in there. But you were in there for an hour and a half. What were you doing?
If I don't pay her, it ain't real therapy.
That's funny.
So at any rate, gentlemen, I hate to be rude, but I actually have another appointment. I got to dash in 3 minutes. So whatever else we need to talk about, or just turn it over to John or Labid. My schedule is such that we're just a few days out from the release, and I've got a couple of other obligations. So this has been fun.
You captured it. You captured it really well. And I'll just add we've had the pleasure of Loretta and Tony, Claudia, watching the film, and we did some little interviews, and they love the movie, and you can't ask for anything more than that. When the actors love it as much as the actors I've seen sort of talking about it and raving about it, and Kim, I didn't tell you, Sean McGuire, is so excited. He's been texting us behind the scene on Facebook, and so you have the actors who just love this movie, and that speaks volumes about Kim, about John, the process, and the film.
Oh, it is. And we have, and Floyd, let me just run through this. We've got Kimberly Elise. I mean, the woman's a beast, right? When she comes to the set, and she's ready to go. You've got Dion Cole, right? You have Marla Gibbs. You have Loretta Devine, Sean McGuire, Arden Marin, Claudio Zavallos, Tony Plana, Donis Leonard Jr., and you have Reno Wilson. And wow. And Roger Cross. I mean, you can't get any better than that. Michael Jai White playing a role that people haven't seen him play before. So the cast is absolutely amazing. They're all terrific. They all love the picture for good reason. And we really hope that the audience comes out and supports this picture, because this is how you get to make special movies like this, right? If they work, and there is a financial component to it, but we've put an entertainment piece out there for them. And I believe if the audience gives it even half a chance, they're going to want to see it maybe again, and they're going to want to tell their friends and family to go and see it, because it's that kind of a movie. It's got a comfortable fit, but it definitely makes you think. It's going to make you laugh. It's probably going to make you cry. And I think that, by the time it says the end, people are going to be clapping. And so maybe that's overselling it, but I don't think so. I'm the writer director. I'm biased, but I know we have something special, and I put everything I had into this picture, for our people. And that doesn't just mean Black people. That means our people who understand community, people who understand love, people who understand dreams, and people who understand that sometimes life isn't fair, but you got to dust yourself off, keep going, and look for your happiness and seek that joy. So come watch it. A snowy day in Oakland. You will not regret it.
Well, gentlemen, any other closing remarks from Labid and John? Because we are up against that hour, but this has been absolutely amazing. But I just want to give you gentlemen an opportunity for any closing remarks or any words of advice to any of our aspiring filmmakers or content creators, and then we can get you guys out of here, because I know all of you are extremely busy, because this Friday, March 17th, ladies and gentlemen, A Snowy Day in Oakland opens nationwide in theaters. Please support this movie. Please, please, please support this movie. But I'm going to get quiet because I'm going to let the guests of honor close this out.
John, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll go first. I think things that we talked about today, I want to say something about the cast, just add on to Kim and what Kim and Labid have said. On set, I feel like each of them was honored to be working with the other ones, by the way. So they all had that kind of this respect for each other and for Kim, and they had a great time doing it. And I think that comes through in their enthusiasm now for seeing the project. I think that was very special. We talked a lot about relationship today, and we talked about how we put together this great cast. And Kim, I just got to give you credit. Each time, it's like you and me. Each time you sat with them, you got their time, and you came out of it with, we want to work together. We want to make a movie together. So relationships and leading with your heart, are kind of themes that are part of the process of how this film came to be made, and they're themes that we're all going to experience Friday night in the movie theater when we get to see it. So I hope people go out and see this film and enjoy it as much as we've enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Come and see us. We'll be waiting for you in the theaters and on the block. Come and see us.
Indeed. Floyd, I want to just thank you for the time, for giving Kim, John, and myself space to talk about the film and get to know you more. And yeah, we're excited for everyone to show up this Friday, this Saturday, this Sunday to watch our film.
Well, thank all of you for gracing my stage. It has absolutely been an honor. I would love for all of you to come back collectively and individually, because I have so many questions that I did not even touch. Yeah. But this has been absolutely amazing. And again, it's just been such a treat to sit and listen and learn from the three of you. That's why I love doing this podcast. But I'm not going to keep you guys any longer. But ladies and gentlemen, if you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, because again, the movie opens this Friday, March 17th, nationwide in theaters. And with that lineup, you gotta go see it. You gotta go see it. Just take your wife out on a date and spend some money and take her to dinner afterwards. But gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on a conversation with, and as I like to say in closing all the time, please love this like a hobby, but above all else, treat it like a business. Everyone, have an absolutely phenomenal night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Floyd. Great pleasure. Great pleasure to be with you.
Take care.